So, as a former salesperson, I really like working on my language. I have hosted a lot of events, I have spoken in front of a lot of people, and whether it's sales you're working in or whatever, how you speak is 10 times more important than what you actually say a lot of the time. So, with this, I outlined a couple of principles that you're probably not aware of that if you fix in your speech, people are going to respect you more, people are going to listen, and how you present yourself is going to change for the better immediately. So, first up, parasite words. So, you're probably already aware of the fact that filler words like or obviously cloud your speech. However, what you're probably not aware of is that words such as maybe and I think have not only a similar, but arguably even a worse impact on your speech. And I'll explain why. So obviously, if you speak with a lot of filler words, hey, my name is Arthur, and I work with software, and I think yeah, I think that our product is probably one of the best in the world, honestly. Yeah, I mean, obviously that sounds dumb, right? You sound like you're like genuinely stupid. However, if you really work on it and you remove all of the filler words such as and you're going to sound a lot better. Even if you speak with the same tonality and if you don't change anything else, if you remove those words, you are going to sound smarter. However, something you have to think about are these two words which people often miss in their speech. And if you're an entrepreneur or if you work in sales, then you need to know this. So maybe, and I think, why are they parasite words? Because they destroy your authority and the ability for other people to understand and actually listen to what you have to say. Why? There is a difference between saying our product is the single greatest product in the world, and yeah, I think honestly, our product is probably one of the best in the world because it fixes this, and this. And honestly, I think maybe it could I think it maybe even fix something for you, right? Because one signals authority that you know what you're talking about. Obviously, you're not never going to say in a sales call our product is the single greatest product in the world, obviously. But as an example, it signals way more authority and that you know what you're talking about than saying maybe I think our product is the single greatest product in the world, right? That's obvious. Next up, tonality. So people, you all do this. You want to signal authority. You want to signal that you know what you're talking about. But when you make a statement, you do this. What is it? This is your tonality. So if you speak with a friend, if you're speaking with a friend, your tonality probably doesn't switch away from something like this. You probably speak in a straight line of words. Maybe you signal a question, like for example, an upward tonality and why it's so bad for making statements is because that tonality in your everyday speech is used for asking a question. Do you want to go to McDonald's or do you want to go to Burger King? What did I just do? I used an upwards tonality to signal a question. However, if you want to make a statement, you don't want to be in and the person you're talking to, you don't want to be in their mind signaling subconsciously perhaps that you're asking a question. Because if you say our product is the single greatest product in the world and it solves a lot of problems and I think it's going to be great exactly for your use case, you're signaling in your, let's call them opponents, why not? You're signaling in your opponent's mind that you are asking a question. You may not think of it like that, but that's what they're hearing, and that's why it destroys your authority. And shit tonality is exactly this. I'm not saying you never want to use an upward tonality, but especially if you're making statements, it should end with a lowered tonality. And tonality in general, if you work in sales, you already know this, is extremely important regardless of if you're making a statement, if you're asking a question, whatever. Because you can say you can say the same thing in two different ways with absolutely catastrophically different consequences. Because there is a significant difference between asking your prospect, let me ask you something, and bulldozing through that question and asking, hey John, can I ask you something? In one case, you bulldoze the question, your prospect doesn't even recognize what the hell you just said, and then you wonder why you didn't build rapport. But if you lean in and you ask, hey John, can I ask you something? And if you're even sitting in your chair, if you're speaking on the phone, you should lean in, because that is going to change your tonality. Because one, you bulldoze through the question, and the second, you signal curiosity. You signal care, honestly. So that's very important, regardless if you work in sales, if you're a public speaker, whatever, you have to work on your tonality. Next up, building a vocabulary. So you know this already. You know someone that has read a thesaurus, they have memorized some sort of words, whatever, anti-disestablishmentarianism or whatever. And now they use that word in every single sentence. And I'm not talking about like genuinely smart sounding words. I'm talking about complex vocabulary that just signals that you're a smartass, because that has two impacts. One, the person you're talking with already is thinking that, shit, this dude sounds like a smartass. That's what he's trying to portray. And the second impact is very important. Sometimes your people don't even understand what you're talking about. So when you speak, you should speak in a language that is first according to the target audience that you're speaking to. Obviously, if you're speaking at a software networking event, for example, obviously, then you can use vocabulary that is related to software development. However, if you speak to someone who's not in software development, why are you even mentioning words like API endpoint or webhook? Right? Listen, the person that is listening to you is going to value you more, not if you speak in fancy words, not if you speak in a fancy vocabulary, but if they understand and they can visualize what you are talking about. And another thing I actually just realized is the fact that in your speech, especially, and this is so important, especially if you're speaking about a complex topic, what you need to use analogies, and I promise this is going to work amazing. I'll give you an example. So I previously worked in sales, and I was selling basically digital marketing. And a question I often got is, all right, but why can't I do it myself? Or rather, people thought that we just clicked a couple of buttons in Google, Facebook ads, and then we just published it. And this ties together with offer creation, and creating a very good offer for whatever it is you're selling is so important. And this is the analogy translated, what we used to get. So listen, John, imagine you are in front of two lemonade stands. One lemonade stand has a sign saying, "We sell fresh, home squeezed lemonade." And the second stand has a sign saying, "We sell a yellow liquid with sweeteners," and that's it. In this case, which one would you pick? And I'm asking this to John. And what John would say is, well, obviously, it's the first one. And I would ask why. Well, because it's easier to understand, it sounds more appealing, and this is important, I know what I'm going to get. This is so much better because your prospect has a picture. You have put an image in their mind of what you are talking about. In this case, I could have said, oh, we create absolutely everything. We create the visuals, we create the designs, we create the copywriting, we do this, we do that, we do that. They don't understand. They don't have an image in front of them. But with this analogy, I break a complex concept, which is offer creation, and something that they have in front of them. They have an image, they have visualized what we are doing. So, especially if you're talking about a very complex subject, use analogies. Obviously, don't overdo it, but it's, I think, fairly obvious. And with this, we have come to our last point, which is pause. It's uncomfortable, right? I mean, obviously, if you have spoken to a large group of people, you know how it feels that you forgot something. Perhaps you wanted to say something better, and then you're in your head, you don't know what to say, and then you go off, and like, yeah, and like, honestly, and you have said a string of words that mean nothing. However, and you've probably seen, if you're in the space, you've probably seen Steve Jobs do this. He was asked I think it was a fairly complex question, or maybe someone even kind of made an offensive comment or something. And Steve Jobs, he stood there, he walked around for a solid minute, thinking of his response. The room was absolutely silent, and his response was genius. Listen, people, I know it's hard to get rid of. I'll actually give you a method you can use to get rid of all of these filler words. However, this is super important. If you use these filler words, they mean absolutely nothing. They destroy your authority, and you sound like a mumbling idiot. But if you replace it with a pause, and especially if you pause before significant points, then you give your listeners a bit of time. You signal that, hey, look, something important is happening. You signal a bit of time for them to process what you're going to say, and then you say it. So with this, use these principles. I'm telling you, people will respect you more. You will sound smarter, even if you use a vocabulary that a 10-year-old understands. And overall, you are going to perform better regardless of where you are speaking. People, listen to this, use it, and best of luck, and see you next time.